and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, guys.
Well done, guys.
Fellas.
Good job. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember John DeWorke.
Here.
Councilmember Lillian Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Ken Gibson.
Thanks, sir. Here.
Councilmember Will Brazington.
Here.
Councilmember Russell Stahl.
Here.
Councilmember Dorothy Dow.
Here.
Mayor Knox White.
Here, you have minutes of October 24th. Will stand approved as submitted unless there are any objections. Seeing none. Councilman Fleming, do we have a no hat rule? I don't know. Do we have a no hat?
I don't know, too bad. Y'all didn't text me before I came up here. It's too late now.
That's a fashion first. I just want to comment, fashion first. I've never seen that. That's very good. Thank you.
All right.
We were both in some ceremonies outside
just
today. It
jealous.
was cold, so she was a lot smarter than I was to do that. Did you wish to say something? Okay, on communications from mayor and council, Councilman DeWorke has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of this council, many of you have known me a long time, and very rarely will Brazington, does John DeWorke get his ire up.
Never.
And and Mayor, I think you can attest to that too. But I will tell you that on Thursday night of this past week, I came away incredibly disappointed because we being the members of the northern part of the city and staff and members of this council have worked very hard on creating a neighborhood boulevard instead of an industrial corridor where Wade Hampton sits. That is, what can we do to Wade Hampton that would transform it into something that would support the neighbors? And if I know you all remember, we went through a whole process in 2018, 2019. I did not, but you all did, to create a Wade Hampton strategic plan. Involved a couple thousand people, thousands of man hours, and a lot of work from a lot of folks here in the audience and elsewhere. And on Thursday night, before the Board of Zoning Appeals was an application for a special exception to allow a storage facility to be built at the bottom part of Wade Hampton Boulevard. But interestingly, in that strategic plan, there was a provision in it that said, no storage facility shall be built within a quarter of a mile of another storage facility. It seemed pretty cut and dry to me, and this council actually adopted that plan in 2019. And so when we went into the BZA meeting, staff recommended denial. Basically, the entire world recommended denial except for the developer, which is understandable. And quite frankly, I thought it was that the BZA was handed a silver platter of because this storage facility was being built within a quarter of a mile of another storage facility, and the strategic plan said that that is not allowed, and there's a provision where the BZA has to or shall look at, must comply, the applicant and projects must comply with the strategic plan, and it clearly did not. I thought this is going to be easy, and what I came away from was sheer shock and disappointment, and I'm mostly disappointed for the neighbors, for this city, because now we will not only have one storage facility, by the way, the BZA passed it, not only will we have one storage facility, but we'll have not only two, but we'll have three within a couple of blocks, right at where the gateway, where we're trying to create a beautiful gateway where Church and Wade Hampton meet. So I just want to say I'm incredibly disappointed, but I will not give up, and I know members of this council will not give up on making sure that we have good growth, good development, and I know the citizens of Greenville expect and know that this council and I will have resolve. You and I, and Mayor, have talked many times about cities around the country that die of 1,000 cuts, and this to me was a slash, and so I'm hoping that we can find a resolution to this. I'm not sure if we can, but we will continue fighting. I know that was longer than typical, but thank you for listening.
Well, and I will add, there was compelling reason to deny this. I never think it's a slam dunk, but in terms of the community turning out to speak, in terms of the staff recommending denial for sound basis, there was compelling evidence to deny this. I will add, I was very disappointed at the turnout on the board. All of our boards and commissions serve at the pleasure of council, and they are volunteers. So I'm very empathetic to that. However, there is ample competition to get on boards. In other words, for the vast majority of boards, we have far more applicants than we have positions. So in my mind, it's somewhat of an honor to serve, and it is optional. So when our board members are poor in attendance, and we do have an attendance policy, and this one was a meeting where there was very low attendance, and 4 people, granted a quorum, but 4 people are able to decide on a case this impactful to surrounding neighborhoods, then we need to relook at who is on it, how people are showing up, those kinds of things. So I fully support you. I know it was at the first thing we did this morning was talk about this, and I really appreciate everyone's input on this and support for Councilmember DeWorkin on it.
Yep, thank you, John.
I have a
Thank you,
question for our planning director and assistant city manager, Ms. Shannon Loren. What, under the new zoning code, which we hope takes effect in a few months, do you want to tell us how the zoning on Wade Hampton Boulevard could be changed by this?
We are still in the process, Mayor, of doing our zoning mapping for the entire city. We worked on it full-time for 2 days last week with our zoning consultants. We are looking at a mixed-use zoning along Wade Hampton, and we are reviewing all of our small area plans as part of our rezoning map for the entire city. Not only the Wade Hampton master plan, but our master plans that have gone back some as many as 15 and 20 years that have yet to be codified. So we are considering each of those and what each of the plans called for as we finalize our zoning maps.
Well, I think this no doubt will inform some of the decisions that can be made in that.
That's right.
That still could be 6 months out or even a little bit longer. Under the current zoning, I suppose Wade Hampton is still C3.
Yes, sir. It is still C3 and special, and it allows for self-storage under special exception. And that is what
And
Councilmember DeWorkin references earlier this
If the
week.
zoning were changed to C2, which is what we currently have on Stone Avenue, for example,
Neighborhood commercial.
that would not be allowed at all. Is that correct?
I think so, but I'd have to verify.
Yeah, I think that'd be
Verify
correct. So I'd-
second.
Yeah, that's
That
neighborhood.
I'd want to
discussion.
verify that.
Yeah, even
see-
the state highway department doesn't like it in terms of how they see the Wade Hampton Boulevard area. I think perhaps the biggest takeaway I have is that this area perhaps should be zoned C2 so that we can really begin to see some modifications in the area and more restrictions on use as well. So it may have to look at that issue between now and the new code coming in to just downzone it C2.
And you all as city council have that right and ability under the land management ordinance to initiate a rezoning of any property within the city at any time. So it would just take a vote of this council and direction from you to me and my staff that that's how you'd like to proceed.
Unfortunately, that would not be undue on this particular project.
Yep.
Yeah, but it
Me
would be
too.
helpful on some other things too that may be coming up in that area. So I think we should take a look at that. So.
Mr. Mayor, quick comment before we move on.
Sure.
Good and valid points, and thanks to each of you for those remarks. On a slightly more upbeat topic, I just wanted to commend these young gentlemen again for leading us through our patriotic act of the Pledge of Allegiance. We hope this is your first city council meeting. Assuredly, we hope it's not your last. Come see us each and every time. I want to recognize too their scout leaders, Pat Gray, Christian Moody, and then what I will call trusted advisors, Marshall Barron, Philip Kilgore behind those two. We're so glad everybody joined us. And if you stay to the very end of this great session we have tonight, maybe we can gather up here and get a picture with you. But thank you for being here with us and appreciate you getting this firsthand lesson in civics. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you'll get one tonight. That's good. Okay, we do indeed have a number of folks who signed up to speak to us on this topic. Well, I usually, let's see, we have also some folks signed on some other topics as well. We'll go ahead and take these. Anybody else who failed to make the 12 o'clock and wants to speak tonight? Difference on, oh, okay. I'll put you in. We only have a few, so we'll do that too. Okay. All righty. Mr. Randall, we have a 3-minute clock over here, by the way, just be mindful of 3 minutes. And Mr. Randall Fowler, you get to speak first, but welcome.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I emailed Councilman Dworkin at the end of Thursday because I very similarly had those same feelings. Very disappointed in the results, very disappointed in the vote. But as adults, we all know that things happen that aren't aligned with what we want. But really, the biggest part of my email to Councilman Dworkin was not the vote. Sure, the two properties in question were a quarter mile within each other, which is against the Wade Hampton development plan. Sure, the staff did say very clearly that they do not recommend this development. Violated, there wasn't enough windows. But the part that really just drove me to the point where I fired off the email, we emailed a couple times, and even coming up here today, was the language that the developer used. The developer in question was up there. He gave his reasoning for why we should build or why you should build there, why he needed to get this approval. And then from that point, we as the community members voiced our concerns. He then went up there and used incredibly coded, racially charged language that was incredibly offensive to me. That here is a man who is advocating to develop, get the stamp of approval from this board, from this city, and he's up there using dog whistle language, threatening our community, literally turning his back on the board that he was looking at us and saying, would you rather me develop here or, and he named off a business that serves the African-American community. It doesn't get much more blatant than that. On a street that is named after a Confederate general, we have a developer that is seeking the approval of the city, and the city willingly gave a stamp to it after hearing him not once, but twice use this dog whistle language. There was no repudiation of that. There was a rubber stamp. I don't know the reasoning why. Much like Councilman Dworkin said, there is a clear violation of the Wade Hampton development plan. There was a clear violation of what the community wanted. There was a clear pushback against what the staff put forward. And then to take it even further, the reprehensible language that he would use, to use dog whistle coding to say, basically, you can allow me to build here, or we're going to put something in here that's going to bring an unwanted element in here. It was offensive to a degree that I have never been a part of before. Living in the time that we live in now, to not hear a single voice on that, to not hear the media say anything about it when they were there covering this. And even today, as we see in the Greenville news, the numbers going down of African Americans who are in that community. And this is the vitriol, this is the language we're hearing, coded, uncoded, it doesn't matter. It's unacceptable. And I have not heard a thing about it. And this plan is going to move forward with the city of Greenville, unfortunately saying, we put this. And I don't know if there's something we can do from this point, but I am asking that we take a step back and at least investigate it, looking to see why it was used and what we can do moving forward to stop this.
Thank you.
Very good.
Next up, who had the hand raised? I'm sorry. You go ahead. I'll squeeze you in here.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
I specifically want to speak to this board and not any one particular.
I'm sorry, can
project.
you give
I'm sorry,
me-
my name is Joe Farmer. I'm
Thank
at 207 Alpine Way. Thank you. The Board of Zoning Appeals is out of control. 7 members represent our 70,000 citizens. This is 1/10,000th of the population on this board. Yet in the last 3 months, 5 of the 7 requests for exemptions have come from board members. The chair, Chris Price, requested storage units at Camperdown Plaza. The city staff recommended to deny, the fire marshal opposed, and the 2040 plan specifically states no storage units in the city center. After a pre-written motion was read, the board voted unanimously to put storage units in the Camperdown Plaza. Karish Patel requested an exemption for storage units across from the new Harris Teeter. The comprehensive plan states there shall not be storage units within a quarter mile of another facility. The city staff voted or recommended to deny. 2 facilities are already located within this area. Once again, the board voted to unanimously approve. Lauren Roundsville had a short-term rental request unanimously passed in the historic Pettigrew district. Each one of these, the discussion was about the developer making dollars. They could not rent their property for what they were trying to get, and so the board twisted themselves in a knot to help them make dollars. Short-term rentals were proposed for the historic Davenport condos. This is currently not allowed in an office district without an exemption. We learned that Mr. Patel was cited by the city for having a short-term rental, which he has owned since May of 2021. The board uses this exemption process to benefit themselves and their clients. You must appoint residents who have no conflicts of interest to this board. Mr. Price has had 2 requests approved in the past 3 months and must be removed. And Mr. Patel broke the short-term rental ordinance and must be removed. This board has no confidence of the citizens and should be reorganized. It is far too common that the board members are either themselves or being paid as a consultant, that they're having these projects and these exemptions. 5 out of 7 in the last 3 months. I look forward to hearing your plans, and I'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you.
So, Jody Hajosi?
Hi.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Jody Hyacey. For those of you who don't know me, I have served on committees with the city for about 11 and a half years, generally serving as vice chair or chair. I'm currently chair of the Greenville Advisory Committee. We just spent the last year working on the Greenville Sustainability Plan with Furman and tons of input from local organizations, community leaders, business owners, and residents. Anytime you're working on some kind of plan, you should have input from all stakeholders. And you need to take all that into account, as well as current city plans, current neighborhood organizations. Last week, the BZA obviously made a decision to approve a storage unit on Wade Hampton that goes against, as has been said, city recommendation, current zoning. They had to get an exemption for it. Recent precedent, I don't know, for those of you who know this, we were just here, I feel like a couple months ago, fighting the same fight on that same plot of land, who for the same owner is currently still on record, who wanted to put on in storage units on that same property, and we're back. Obviously, that didn't matter to them either. The Greenville 2040 plan, and more importantly, the Wade Hampton Boulevard strategic plan. 4 years ago, the city hired Muldrow and Associates to conduct an area study of the Wade Hampton Boulevard to put together a strategic plan with a list of actions, both large and small, that the city can do to improve this important gateway, encouraging responsible development and to create a more bike walk friendly community along the corridor. The study surveyed nearly 2,000 neighbors. It was 1,900 and something in the community and stakeholders. They had over 20 meetings. They spent countless hours of city staff time, not to mention over $400,000 of taxpayer money on the study. And that doesn't count like staff time. The survey was so well received, it was fully adopted by the council in 2019. They asked the neighbors, if you've read the plan, the Wade Hampton Boulevard strategic plan on page 16, they asked what the neighbors in the area would want. They asked about multifamily senior residential, multifamily residential, single family residential, convenience stores, national hotel chains, national restaurants, national and local retail. At no point did they ask neighbors if they wanted another storage unit. That was never on the survey. It's a 75-page document. They never asked neighbors if they would like another storage unit in their neighborhood. They spoke of landscaping, more trees, road diets, curb cuts, zebra crossings to connect the neighborhoods on either side of Wade Hampton Boulevard. If you look at page 62 of the plan, which has already been referenced, it says you cannot have another storage unit within a quarter of a mile. The life storage that was put there a couple years ago went in direct opposition of the plan. This is a plan that you all approved unanimously that is being completely disregarded. The BZA ignored absolutely everything, that all those bullet points I went over, and they went in favor of the stakeholders. The only people that spoke in favor of the project were stakeholders, and none of them live in the neighborhood. We need to readdress.
Thank you. Joyce Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Joyce Murphy, and I live at 14 East Earl Street. I am here because I want to express my disappointment at the ruling made by the BZA on Thursday, November 10th, regarding 255 Wade Hampton Boulevard. You, City Council, provided the BZA with your recommendation, which was to deny the special exception, citing the exception was not in keeping with Greenville 2040 comprehensive plan. Without going into too many of the details, you identified Wade Hampton as a gateway to the city, and based upon future plans, Wade Hampton would meet established criteria and complement a bigger picture. Unfortunately, the BZA did not agree with your recommendation and granted Mr. Patel his exception. What I want to know is, why do we have Greenville 2040 if it is not going to be utilized? This plan took years to come to fruition. Untold man hours, you, city staff, and many, many citizens of Greenville who were led to believe they were part of the process. The plan represents our community values and what we are willing to support. Did the BZA not get their copy? Greenville 2040 was expensive in terms of dollars, as well as man hours, but a good investment by taxpayers into our future. Now, looking at the power the BZA is wielding and their decision to put the plan aside, that investment seems to be at risk. How many more decisions will the BZA make without consideration of the 2040 plan? I would like to add that I believe no member of the BZA board should be permitted to present an application as long as they are fulfilling their desire to sit on the board. Even though Mr. Patel recused himself when this agenda item came up on Thursday, he did leave the room. The support of his board colleagues had already been garnered. As a final point, I'm concerned that the BZA consists almost entirely by people who have a stake in promoting development in the city. We need to make sure there is a balance of voices and perspectives. Thank you.
Steve Mills. I was about to say you're not here, but there you're at the back of the room. Okay, all right.
Well, I'm not going to read everything that I wrote down because most of it's been covered already. So I'm here about the storage unit on Wade Hampton Boulevard. And I'd like to bring something else to this. And by the way, Steve Mills, 41 West Hillcrest Drive. So in 2022, I've been participating on the Pedestrian Safety Committee with the city. I've been participating on the Development Code rewrite, and I'm president of the North Main Community Association. The comments tonight are mine, though, because I cannot represent all 2,000 homes. I don't have that kind of data. Just to be clear on that point. I also met with Mr. Patel when he first started this project, and it was clear that he was going to push it through no matter what feedback he got. I did give him feedback about moving the building back from the street, putting in wider sidewalk, more trees, that sort of thing, just to make it aesthetically more pleasing. Because if it got approved, I at least wanted to make sure that it would be as nice a storage building as you could possibly have. The problem is he calls it mixed use, but 80% of the building is storage. So it's really, as I got published in the Greenville News, is putting lipstick on a pig. It's not a mixed use facility, it's a storage facility. And most of the people I do talk to would rather see something else that is more fitting for the gateway on Wade Hampton Boulevard. So the only other point that I'll bring up that's maybe a little, that hasn't been mentioned, because we've already talked about the quarter-mile distance, which to me is quite clear. In fact, I walked this morning with 2 GPS devices just to make sure it was within a quarter mile, because I didn't want to come up here and say something if it wasn't true. So the other point that I'll make is we're talking about neighborhood nodes or different nodes around the city in the development rewrite. And a storage facility has nothing to do with bringing people and places together that are surrounding a neighborhood. So my point would be, I hope when the development code rewrite is completed, this type of thing will not be allowed, and the BZA will have no say-so in this. So think about the future, the 2040, the development code rewrite. I know it's not finished yet. And we also have the infill work that was done last year that never got implemented. So there's a lot of ongoing work with the intention of the city to not allow this. So why would we allow it now, especially when they've violated the 2019 Wade Hampton Boulevard strategic plan? Thank you.
Shannon, is the elements of consideration for the BZA from a legal standpoint, sometimes you have things that are, to use a good legal word, precatory, which means suggestive, if you will, and other things that are absolutely shall not have. How do you read that quarter mile?
I believe that it was, we recommended a denial, the SAF did, based on that element of the Wade Hampton strategic plan. And the reason that we did that is that that plan is in our minds considered binding because it is adopted by city council. We have some plans in the city that are only adopted by planning commission, at which point they are advisory, but we consider plans that are adopted by city council to be binding. And then that plan was completed prior to Greenville 2040. And it was incorporated into Greenville 2040 and made note of the small area plans that had been previously adopted and made part of that overall plan.
But that's true, but also the quarter mile provision, which is very specific, that seems like an absolute prohibition to me. I don't know how they can interpret that.
It's in the plan, but it was outlined in the.
It's part of the plan. It's not part of the
code.
But
not
it
part
is,
of the code.
it is, so that plan, to be clear, was adopted by the previous council.
That's correct.
But I can say with some confidence, had it come before this current council, it would have been adopted. One thing that strikes me as equally as important about this is the poise we are at to make an investment in this boulevard with taxpayer money. In other words, I know at least John and I and other council members, I'm sure, have used that strategic plan as a sort of our guiding document for investment needed in Wade Hampton, and using that as our roadmap, as a visionary plan should be. So it's already been put into play, and this, again, that makes this all the more egregious, as it's a complete strike against it. So,
Lee, is there a path forward in overturning a decision by BZA that's in clear violation of both their strategic plan and in GVL 2040?
Councilmember Stahl, I'm not sure if there is a path forward in terms of an appeal on that basis. There are legal considerations that an appellate court, which for the BZA is the circuit court, right? It doesn't go straight to the Court of Appeals, but the circuit court sits as the Court of Appeals for decisions of the BZA. It's a very high standard of review once the BZA has made a decision, but that is, that avenue is something that I've been asked to look into, and we're looking into that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Matthew Johnson.
I have a question.
Go. Okay.
Yeah, I have one question. I want to know, because I keep hearing that members of BZA are moving their own agendas. That to me is not only a conflict of interest, but it seems something that would be, that people could sue us for. So, are we investigating that? Because I've been on council a long time. I haven't heard of this before. I do remember there was one time that something like this happened and the person was removed immediately. To me, I'm having a problem with that.
I serve as our office's liaison to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I'm there at all of those meetings. It's Mr. Price, who's the board chair, has not been the applicant on any applications that I'm aware of.
Okay.
He's an engineer and he is hired by developers to do civil engineering on projects. And so he will, because his firm has a financial interest in the project because they're being paid out of the project, he'll recuse himself from any votes that he's done engineering work on.
Right.
But he himself has not been the applicant. And Ms. Roundsville has also not been the applicant on any applications. She represented a purchaser of a home, a single-family residence, that later submitted an application for a short-term rental. And because she closed on that house and had communication with the purchaser, who was the applicant, she recused herself on that as well. Mr. Patel was the applicant on this one.
Council Fleming, I would add that I think maybe what this has brought to light is, something is amiss and something may be broken, and we are exploring all options on what we can do, both on the board and the process.
Yeah, we do need to explore all options because this is just terrible for that particular community because they've been struggling for over 30 years to try to get this together. I mean, I've been, some years back, we had a problem and it seemed to subside. Now, wham, here it comes again. It is just a horrible thing to put that on Wade Hampton Boulevard. And I applaud them and I don't blame them. And I'm just trying to tell you now, I'm not advocating violence, but we ought to march up the street. I'm just saying that's a horrible situation because this just slaps them in the face.
I think the neighborhood and the neighborhoods have been waiting a long time, and we have incredible amount of momentum, both with support from this council and the plan that's put together. And I think this was a real punch to the gut, to be honest with you.
I will say also on our interview process for boards and commissions, certainly exploratory questions towards such conflicts need to be, for all, need to be added. And I'd ask legal and staff to take that under consideration as we move through board appointments, that those exploratory questions have got to be asked.
Yes, that's wrong.
Mayor Johnson. You were on the planning commission. Now, we weren't the BZA, were you?
I was never on the BZA, thankfully.
He was chairman. Matt was chairman of the planning commission.
I remember being chairman. I couldn't have told you it was planning or BZA, but okay, it's planning commission. Okay.
So for the record, I'm Matt Johnson, 336 West Earl Street. And I was actually here to speak on two different things. Can I come back later and do the other thing while we're talking about? Can I come back later for the second issue? All right, so on the BZA, I'm here to speak about the BZA. I had a lot that I wanted to say. Fortunately, I came after Jody Hyacey, so there's a lot less I need to say, which is often the case, if you know Jody. But more importantly, give credit where credit's due. John, you were my opponent. You're a Republican. I don't like either of those things. You're doing a good job here. And you deserve some credit for your remarks earlier that covered most of the salient points. But I will say this. In terms of the optics of the ethics and how BZA runs, BZA is important, Planning Commission is important, people are invested in the decisions that are made there. We need a process that works and that is trusted. I don't know that the BZA is a trusted process at this point. And really, I would encourage council to look at how it's working. The good news is it sounds like you're going to do that and you ought to do that. And I would thank you for doing that. One of the things I would mention, when I was the chair of the Planning Commission, I wouldn't talk to the other commissioners. When I was on the Planning Commission, I didn't do anything in my career that would have yielded a conflict. But I also didn't want to talk to the builders, the developers, the architects who were on the commission with me about their projects that were coming before Planning Commission. I think we should probably talk to the BZA because it sounds like there was a lot of discussion going on before these meetings and a lot of prep work being done that may have resulted in the decisions that were made here. It shouldn't occur. The city attorney probably knows more than I do, but under the Freedom of Information Act, things like this need to be public. They need to be out in the open. If they're happening on text, if they're happening on telephones before the hearings are occurring, that's a problem. And probably some training of those members of the Board of Zoning Appeals would be helpful. But again, I've got great neighbors. They said everything else that needs to be said. John said what needs to be said. This thing's a real problem, and I hope that you guys will really look into it and reestablish some trust between the neighborhoods and the folks that are out there on the BZA doing the hard work, which I appreciate because it is hard. But the other thing that I would suggest, the people that are doing this, when I was on the Planning Commission, it was the same people that came before us time and time again. The people that are doing this are people that are coming to the Board of Zoning Appeals repeatedly. And we know who they are. You can look and see who it is. You guys can talk to them and try to make them act responsibly and in the best interest of neighborhoods, even when they don't live in those neighborhoods.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. Yeah, that's interesting about the conflict interest. It's one thing to have the typical conflict interest we hear is somebody who has a conflict interest, but they have to explain what it is. That may be relevant. It's very unusual to get a conflict interest where you're actually the applicant. That makes it very different, doesn't it? And it's not indirect, it is direct.
Well, I think there's another issue too. And I think what Matt is talking about is that recusal has to be total recusal. Recusal can't mean, hey, I'm going to talk to everybody on the board and make sure that everybody's on page with me, and then I leave and let them vote by themselves. I mean, BZA is a, I mean, I know we've gone through the process of picking people for BZA. It's one of those boards where we have no real authority to go back and fix if they mess up, at least as far as the decisions that they make generally do not come back to us. So it's imperative that we put people on there that understand that, and also understand that we're putting them on there because we're trusting them to follow the policies and procedures, and that includes our plans that we put forth when they make those decisions. And it sounds like we may have a problem in that respect, and there's something we need to do.
Yeah, we usually call it a quasi judicial body.
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
very, very different from planning commission and this board and everything else we have. It's a very different kind of board. All righty. Mr. Tyler Prescott.
Hello, my name is Tyler Prescott. I live at 320 East Arlington Avenue. I'm the CEO of the Upstate South Carolina LGBT Chamber of Commerce, an organization dedicated to the economic empowerment of LGBTQ people and businesses and ally-owned businesses and individuals. We represent approximately 200 businesses located right here in the Upstate and around 10,000 Upstate employees. Thank you for allowing me to speak in favor of the Resolution 16D, share with you the remarkable potential of the LGBTQ community here. By the most modest polling, 8 to 10% of our population is a member of the LGBT community. Gallup polling just this year showed 20% of Gen Z are members of the LGBT community. It sounds like hyperbole, but LGBTQ people and LGBTQ-owned businesses generated $1.7 trillion in economic impact last year, created hundreds of thousands of jobs. And I'd like Greenville to be a place that accesses those tax dollars and allows those businesses to succeed. All that to say, there are still disparities among our queer community members, not just nationally, but right here in Greenville. 45% of LGBTQ seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year, and LGBTQ youth who live in a community that's accepting of LGBTQ people and take steps to reduce their disenfranchisement reported significantly lower rates of attempted suicide than those who did not. We can still be let go from our jobs and denied services for our sexuality and gender identity. The City of Greenville can, among other things, still help when denied housing, employment, or spaces to sleep for queer or trans unhoused folks. We're tax-paying citizens. We live here, we work here, we pay taxes here. I'm very excited to speak in favor of 16D. The Human Rights Campaign puts out a survey every year that ranks municipalities on a score of 0 to 100 on actions taken by municipalities to support their LGBTQ citizens. We're ranked below many of our regional neighbors, including Columbia and Charleston, who score in the 80s every year. While I expect Greenville to score much better in 2022, the 2021 results, we scored a 33 out of 100. One thing I know is that when I talk to enterprise businesses, small businesses, and individuals, one thing they look for when they relocate is how a municipality treats their historically disenfranchised members. I love Greenville, but I have a difficult time convincing businesses and queer people to move here. I believe this resolution will help local businesses attract, retain, and recruit talent, not just economically empower LGBT people, but everyone in Greenville. I believe the LGBT community has a remarkable potential here. I ask you to vote yes on this resolution.
Can I ask you a question? Where was the survey you referenced?
It is, the Human Rights Campaign has it's the MEI index. It's the Municipality Equality Index.
Thank you.
Mr. Michael Kilgore.
Good evening, Michael Kilgore, 11 Walkmore Avenue. I agree with Mayo. Ms. Fleming, you should take your hat off because it hides your lovely face. We can't see it from out here.
That's okay. You be all right.
The fundamental purpose of government is to govern itself, and we're doing that with the redistricting of council seats. We've been through the no-show group of meetings where we didn't have a map before us. We now have 4 meetings scheduled. Originally, the website said that there was going to be a forum, so that is an improvement. The District 4 meeting is November 29th, but we don't have a draft map in front of us. Don't know when that map is going to show up, and Thanksgiving is upon us. We also do not know what the schedule will be for City Council to consider the comments that come from those 4 meetings to come and go from the draft map to the final map. What is the schedule? We don't know what the schedule is. There's just a lot of questions right now. It's been 10 months since your resolution, January 10th, talking about the redistricting process. And I would like to commend the city clerk and city attorney, who frankly have been left out to dry in this process because they don't have anything to present right now. And it's been 10 months since the council passed the resolution. We should have had a draft map way a long time before. And this draft map is being produced outside the view of the public, unlike, for instance, the Greenville 2040 plan, where several dozen citizens were on the board that was drafting that plan. So I would urge that we get this plan out to the public as fast as possible. Furthermore, there's the question of publicity. There was so much more publicity about the 2040 plan than there was for what we did 10 years ago in 2010 on the 2010 census map. We put a lot more publicity in the ice skating rink next door than we do on redistricting. And, you release the map, it may be right before the Thanksgiving holiday. What's going to happen? We say we want public input, we want public participation, but we're not informing the public on a timely basis. If you don't do that, in effect, the public meeting is really why have one. So you'll be hearing more from me because I plan on attending all 4 of the district meetings. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And
Thank you,
Leslie-
Mr. Kilgore.
Sonny.
Very well said.
Sonny Dworkin. I meant to have you up with BZA comments. I'm sorry, your name was at the end of the list and I picked it wasn't.
I told John I was going to have
I
that.
forgive y'all.
Mhm.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I am Sunny Dworkin, and I live at 18 East Earl Street. I am the Colonel Elias Earl Historic District Association City Liaison. And that's, that is CETA. It's basically Earl and James Street Association. Our board of directors is appalled you guessed it, the Board of Zoning Appeals approval of another storage facility at the city's Wade Hampton Gateway next to Community Tap at its November 10th meeting. According to the city website, in order for BZA to grant a special exception, the project should meet 4 criteria. 2 of those criteria are to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and compatibility with surrounding lands. This decision goes against the Wade Hampton strategic plan adopted by this body in February of 2019. So it does not meet the first criteria of being consistent with the comprehensive plan. The plan specifically states on page 62 that a storage facility should not be located within a quarter mile of another storage facility's property line. This one is within 900 feet from another storage facility and just over a quarter of a mile from a second storage facility. To city staff's credit, they recommended denial for this project for its lack of consistency with the comprehensive plan and its lack of compatibility with surrounding lands. However, the BZA decided to dismiss this recommendation, ignore Greenville 2040, and ignore the Wade Hampton strategic plan and approve it. With BZA's actions Thursday, the Gateway will have 3 storage facilities to welcome newcomers and Greenvillians into the city. I know this is not your vision. Interestingly, the BZA denied a storage facility at this exact location in 2018, and that was prior to you passing the comprehensive plan for Wade Hampton. Now, 3 years later, after the adoption of that plan and the adoption of Greenville 2040, they decided that a storage facility was okay. As Steve Mills mentioned, it's technically mixed use, but 3 of its 4 stories, are a storage facility. The BZA's decision is a slap in the face to neighbors who spent countless hours providing input to the Wade Hampton Boulevard and Greenville 2040, not to mention the amount of taxpayer dollars and resources put into both of these strategic plans. What is the point of these comprehensive plans if the boards you appoint do not abide by them? Thank you for your time this evening.
Mr. Mayor, before we move on with our agenda, may I raise a question to the city attorney, please? Does the Board of Zoning Appeals maintain and operate under some sort of internal operating procedures?
They have their own bylaws.
They do.
They do. They're required to. And then, of course, there are state statutes that govern their operation and our city code as well.
Do you know, just, as I put you on the spot, who has the prerogative to potentially amend and change, modify their operating procedures? Is that a city council responsibility or a state?
To amend their internal procedures? I certainly think that council would have the ability to amend the code to change that.
Okay.
They amend their own bylaws, but council can certainly amend the.
So let me delineate the difference there. So that which brings them into existence is the code, which of course is the responsibility of city council. But separate from that, they have call them bylaws or operating procedures they abide by. Is it the prerogative of the BZA or anybody else to review and potentially amend those as needed?
BZA could review and amend their own bylaws.
Okay, no
Council.
outside entity.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
I think though that we have the ability to state what they have to consider when they are looking at a proposal. Is that correct?
You're talking about under the city code that governs the Board of
Yes.
Zoning Appeals? Yes, so, right, there's state law, city code, and then their bylaws. Correct.
So I was thinking the same way. I was thinking about charge, what's your purpose and your reason for being, but then also recognizing that as a group seeks to fulfill the charge, there may be elective voluntary steps that they're going about there. And so maybe to where you're going to, Councilmember Gibson, thinking about if there's certain protocols that ought to be followed or things that greater attention is giving to, if there's a failure at any point in time by the part of the body to do that, could somebody else rectify the situation by ensuring something's done different operationally?
Well, I want to, my understanding, and I'm saying this from my understanding from at one point serving on the county BZA, is that council has the ability to dictate what the BZA is supposed to review and consider when they make various decisions. And correct me if I'm wrong, either Shannon or Lee, in that respect. So to the extent that we feel like they are not considering things in the manner in which we want them to consider it, My understanding is that we can amend our code in order to make that the case. Now, as far as internal procedures, as far as, how they show up and that kind of thing, I'm not sure we have authority over that. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But there are some things that we can look at. Now, with that said, I will say this. One of the reasons why codes for BZAs are written in the way that they're written is because councils generally want to try to create a body that can handle various things so that they don't have to deal with them. Okay? So, to the extent that we've given them a certain amount of discretion in things, my understanding is that we have done that in order to try to alleviate the burden of council in that regard. Now, with that said, if we put people on BZA that aren't doing that, and aren't really following those procedures and following those directives in the manner in which we want them to follow it, then we can certainly make changes. There's a whole host of changes we can make. I mean, we can change, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, either Lee or Shannon, we can change, what they have to consider. We can change the makeup of the board. We can change who's on the board. There are a number of things that are at council's discretion to try to make the board work the way that we think the board should work.
I
don't know if that answers your question.
To me, and truly, city attorney and Shannon ultimately can guide us on this, we're not going to solve it tonight. It's very simple to me. This is a question of ethics. It is a question of ethics, plain and simple. And from the outside looking in and from the inside looking in, ethics were compromised in an applicant coming to this board. To further make it even more egregious, Councilmember Fleming and I joined the training of all these board members about 3 weeks ago. And I recall a very lengthy presentation on ethics. About an hour and a half, I think it was, Shannon.
Oh, yeah, it was.
By an esteemed professor at Clemson. So it's fresh in everybody's mind who's serving on these boards. And this was plain and simple a question of ethics. And for that reason, this council has its work to do and readily accepts that work on looking at who's appointed to not only this board, but all our boards, but particularly this board in the very short term.
Yeah.
So that's about all I know.
And with that said, we should probably do that in a different environment than we're doing it right here on this council meeting tonight.
Yes,
Yeah, this is a personnel boards and commission issue.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
I just wanted to ask a question because
Councilman DeWorke.
it has been my understanding for all of these years I've been on council, if it's a quasi judicial board, which I think the BZA is, if that's true, then there is possible litigation for certain parts of the things that are done or not done correctly. I just want to be sure because I've always understood that to be, and I don't remember it ever changing. So
we're gonna.
That's correct.
We're gonna turn over every stone we can. Mr. Mayor, one thing I didn't do is there are a lot of people here. First of all, thank you to all the people that came to address this issue. And there are a lot of people in here that came but did not speak. I'd like whoever came and is concerned about this issue, would you stand up and let us all recognize you for coming tonight? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll proceed on with our agenda tonight. We have an appointment of the Youth Commission. Who has got that up?
Yes, sir. We
Well,
have our
representative.
co-chairs with us
Okay.
today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And ladies, if you would introduce yourselves again.
Good evening. My name is Emmy Kohler. I'm a senior at Greenville High School.
My name is Riley Shaw. I'm also a senior at Greenville High School.
And really quickly, before we appoint our new member today, we'd just like to recognize the current members in attendance, Matthew Cotner and Caroline Stewart. If y'all would like to stand up really quickly, if that's all right.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. With that being said, the Youth Commission would like to recommend the following individual for appointment: Victoria Mullen of Christ Church Episcopal School.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Is Victoria with us tonight?
yeah, she's standing.
Okay. thank you
Okay,
very
there she
much.
is.
Mr. Mayor, you look for a motion to accept?
Yes, please.
I so move.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. You are so named.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We have some items on our consent agenda. Do we have a motion, please?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Motion second, clerk call the roll.
Before we move on, I had my second topic.
Oh, I was going to call you when it came up on the agenda.
Oh,
1580, I'm sorry.
that's not,
Okay. Consent agenda.
I so
motion
moved.
second.
Consent agenda, yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember DeWorke,
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson,
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington, Councilmember Stahl,
Aye.
Councilmember Dow,
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Regular agenda, 15A.
An ordinance to adopt the 2021 International Building Codes and to amend Chapter 6 Building and Building Regulations of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Greenville.
Move
So
to
moved.
approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions, comments? Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15B.
An ordinance to appropriate $45,000 in the miscellaneous grant fund for the FY 2022 South Carolina State Homeland Security Grant Program.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15C.
An ordinance to approve a lease agreement between the City of Greenville and 1015 South Main Street, Greenville LLC for public parking in the West End area and to appropriate $5,600,190 in the parking fund for this purpose.
So moved.
Second. Second, Mandyford, do you want to come forward, maybe explain this? We have a motion and a second, and this is pretty significant since it's a lot of public parking in the West End.
To approve, rather.
Do you have the slides pulled up? I was running the slides. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, it's my pleasure to be here tonight on behalf of the team to present a partnership opportunity with the SunCap development in the west end of Greenville. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So this is a mixed-use development in the west end at the corner of South Main and Markley Streets, which will consist of approximately 250 apartments and 15,000 square feet of retail and an accompanying parking garage. For some time now, city staff has been in discussions with the developer about their ability to increase the size of their parking garage to serve not just the needs of their development, but also the surrounding area. This is a snapshot of the project design, location, and the location of the parking garage within the, development. So it's right there in the middle. And this is directly adjacent to the baseball stadium. So the garage will be 8 stories. Public parking will be located on the first 3 stories. So you can see here a conceptual design of the first and second stories. The dark green is the public parking. So you'll have some at the entry level and then going up to floors 2 and 3. There will be a nested entry. So residents of the project will be on decks 3 and above. And so there will be a second gate for them to get access to those spaces. Under the terms of the lease, SunCap will construct a parking garage of approximately 560 spaces. The city will lease up to 135 of those, subject to final design approval of their project. Those spaces will be leased to the city for a term of 30 years for use as public parking. Under the terms of the agreement, the city will pay the full lease cost up front. So it'll be a capital contribution to the project of approximately $5.3 million. And that includes the construction, design costs, legal fees, and other ancillary costs associated with the garage. The city will also incur a cost of around $250,000 for acquisition and installation of the parking control equipment. If you look at this on an annualized basis, so we're getting 5.3 million, but we're getting 30 years of parking. That's around $1,300 per space per year. Our average parking space in the city makes $1,100 per year. So just if we assume that this is going to perform at the worst of any of our system garages, it will cover about half the cost of the lease. So the bottom line, the city will recoup about half of the dollars that we put into this project and generate much needed public parking for the next 30 years in the West End. Happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a couple of questions. Sorry. Just had a little water problem going. It's passed. Matt, we had some conversation via email today, and I just want to bring those out. And I know this sounds like the soothsayer of doom, but one of my questions was, what is the city's exposure? The property gets built, we put in 5 million, we get 135 spaces, property burns to the ground. What does the city get back? Or what is our exposure for that investment? That's question number one. And question number two is, in a perfect girl's dream, if there are never any cars again, and we're not dealing with parking, because y'all know how much I love to talk about parking, and we don't believe we need 135 public spaces, what is the city's flexibility to transfer, sell, whatever those spots to another entity? So those are my two questions, Matt, if you can cover those.
So under the terms of the lease agreement, the city does have the option to sublease the spaces to another entity. There's a review process with the developer, but the specific language says that their approval will not be unreasonably withheld from allowing us to sublease.
So they are ours to broker in the future, okay? Should we decide to, which is extremely remote. And then what if the building burns to the ground?
So that's dealt with in several places under the lease document. It damaged the facility that renders it temporarily unavailable. Authorizes the lease to be extended automatically for the time that the public loses access to the spaces. So if there's an event that occurs that requires repair and the public can't access the spaces for 6 months, the agreement will be extended for 6 months. In the event of a catastrophe that renders the garage unusable, that's an insurance matter. Both parties are cross-insured under the agreement, and we would seek a recovery under those terms.
Are we exposed to maintenance on these?
Not beyond basic cleaning and painting of spaces. The maintenance lies with the developer. We will pay a pro rata share of the operating costs of the garage based on the number of spaces.
Okay, thank you.
We're using the county funds for this?
Yes, sir. This is coming from the county square.
Point. This is the money we received from the county of Greenville some time ago for parking in the West End. So we got what we wanted out of the county. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
The zoning for this, et cetera, have we changed the zoning for this? I mean, do we have to change the zoning for this to happen?
No, ma'am.
What is the current zoning of the church? Okay, Allen Temple.
Yes, ma'am, it's C4. CBD, C4.
Oh, it's already C4.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And this project is fully entitled. They're going through the permit review process at this point.
Okay.
Okay, clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Dworkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
All right. Good. 15D.
An ordinance to amend Chapter 8 Businesses of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Greenville pertaining to mobile food vendors.
What's up, Second.
Second. Enthusiastic.
Y'all want more comments from me? No?
Let it rip.
Okay, clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Matt seemed to want to comment.
I do need to make one comment, just to
Sure.
make sure this message doesn't get lost in translation. This is part one of a two-step process to make this fix. This will amend the business license ordinance. There still is a process going through the planning commission to make the text. So don't rush out to your food trailers just yet.
Okay.
And by the way, Matt, in the last
Still
two,
cooking. We're
in the
still
last
cooking.
3 minutes, you've just confirmed how much I'm gonna miss you, man.
Oh, Lord.
City clerk.
Clerk will
I
call the
need,
roll.
before we go call around, is the trailers in there, the food trailers? Is going to be discussed in here?
Matt's nodding yes.
Okay, you're nodding yes, Matt?
Yes.
I trust him.
That is the amendment to allow food trailers under the same rights and privileges as food
Food
trucks.
trucks.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure, because it'd been discussed, but I didn't know where it was. Okay, all right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15E,
An ordinance to authorize a pilot project for the development of affordable housing initiatives.
Move to approve.
Second.
motion second. Matt, you had something to speak on 15E. I told you we'd get you.
Well, it sounds like
You get more impact this way, you know?
I think I like where this is headed, but just for the record, Matt Johnson, 336 West Earl Street. I am here because I am on the steering committee for the Greenville Homeless Alliance. I know you all know about the Greenville Homeless Alliance. For people behind me that are not familiar with it, you can find it on the internet. We're doing a fundraiser tomorrow, and we'd love to have you. But the Greenville Homeless Alliance, one of the things that we want to do is reduce the number of homeless in Greenville. People need a home. They need a fixed nighttime residence. And we know that there is a spectrum of housing. There are multi-million dollar houses in Greenville that I can't afford, most people can't afford, but then there are houses at the lower end of that spectrum. The fact that you guys are looking at the 30% AMI to 100% AMI spectrum within the scope of this ordinance is a great thing. It's great for working people in Greenville, and it's great for people that don't have a home in Greenville. We need more houses in Greenville because we have people that need those houses. And anything you can do to help make those houses more, cheaper, better, that's going to, as I mentioned, I'm not a Republican and I'm not a fan of trickle-down economics, but if we have more houses, it's going to trickle down to everybody and make more houses available to more people, which is in line with the goals of the Greenville Homeless Alliance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Clerk will call the roll. Clerk will call the roll.
I got some questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah. To Merle, I think. My apologies. So, in a nutshell, this is just giving us the ability to study the alternative equivalent compliance that this developer is in partnership on to pay a cash amount in lieu of doing some things on this developer's development. If I got that in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Okay. So the developer is not having to do certain things that are required by code, I guess. And in exchange, he's paying, this is a fee in lieu of, he or she is paying a fee to a pot to fund affordable housing. Still nodding. Okay, so I just want to make sure I had it broken down because I had to get it simplified. A couple of questions, and most of these are design, and then one is probably from Merle. They are getting to do reduced pavement widths as one of their not having to do, right? I'm reading that as one of the whereases.
Yes.
Flexibility for this development. So are those paving widths still going to be ADA compliant? Are we compromising mobility by
No.
giving this out of reduced paving widths?
No, everything's been reviewed by our engineering team. It went to the planning commission with that all contemplated, noted, and approved.
Okay. How was the amount of $544,000 determined? In
That's
other
the
words,
savings from the reduction of the pavement width, the sidewalk on the one side, and the storm came out to that cost amount.
and who comes up with that number, us or the developer?
The developer, and we provided it to us and we reviewed it.
And we feel good about that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I think it's a great program, and I think it being a pilot is great, but in the long run, I don't want to get to a point to where a developer says, I'll give you X to get out of doing Y, and that X goes to your affordable housing fund, which we very much need, but it has to be a fair compensation to get out of doing, it is a fee in lieu of, as far as I'm concerned, and the housing fund needs to be fairly compensated for that. So that was the point I was going to make, but it sounds like we have protocols in there that reviewed this particular project.
Yes, we ensured that it was in line with the construction costs that would have been towards that a dollar amount.
Okay, all right, great.
And if I could just clarify one thing, the money will not be, that's going to be used for affordable housing initiatives, doesn't go to the housing fund.
Right. I
It's going
misspoke.
through our community development department, who will ensure that everything is run in accordance with all of our standard procedures that through the community development department.
Right, I misspoke on that, thanks.
And I would say too, that we've found over the long term that the best ideas for how to reduce costs come from the people who are building the houses. They know better than anyone else of what could be done to reduce costs for housing. So good piece of advice, but it should always be a work in progress. We can always make some further changes.
That's right. This is one pilot project to see how it works. And it really came between a conversation between staff and the developer about, we were like, what could you, how can you help us provide affordable housing in this development? And this is where we landed. And so, you know, this is an opportunity to try to look at something different that can address affordable housing. I think everyone knows that there's not just one solution here. It's about having tools in our toolbox. This is just something to try to see if it works.
Yeah. I think very, very commendable.
Question.
You ready for the?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. It's my understanding, and I just want to be sure, because I think reducing from what I must have read, I read it somewhere, reducing the sidewalk width, because I think we've been asking about 10 feet, and then we're reducing it to the normal 7 or 8 feet.
Actually, in the residential, we require 5-foot sidewalk with curb lawn, and we didn't reduce the sidewalk.
curb
width.
lawn, okay.
We just reduced it on one side with a connection through, where you still have connectivity throughout the neighborhood. And we just reduced it. We just reduced where a portion of the sidewalk was located.
Okay, all right. I thought I'd read that it was still going to look pretty good. Okay. All right, thank you
Yes,
so
ma'am.
much. I appreciate
It's
it.
all of the ADA requirements. It meets all of
yes.
the mobility requirements. It
Just
meets everything.
the curb lawn.
It's just an opportunity to see if we are creative in how we look at these things, if there's an opportunity to divert those funds towards affordable housing, which we so desperately need at this
Yes.
time.
Okay.
Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15F.
An ordinance to appropriate $393,986 in the Greenville Zoo Fund to recognize contributions from the Greenville Zoo Foundation and authorize the construction of the giraffe feeding platform.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington. Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
On behalf of the giraffes, thank you.
Okay, 15G.
An ordinance to approve an agreement and memorandum of understanding between the City of Greenville, Verde Development, Inc., and Hollingsworth Fund, Inc. for a bridge and swap rabbit trail connector to Legacy Park.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, I do have, before we get to vote,
Motion
a
second. Yes.
comment and question. First comment I would say is, I mean, as council knows and many in the audience and public know, this is an important, really exciting project. It's been underway or in the works for quite some time. So thanks to staff. I see we've got Verde Development representatives and Dan and Debbie here. Thank y'all for being here. And I've had the privilege, along with maybe somebody else on council, serving on what's been known as the Swamp Rabbit Trail Connection Advisory Group for probably a year or so. So to see us get to an evolution place on this one in the presence of this MOU is exciting. And there's a lot of interest, eagerness by many folks throughout the city, and particularly out in the Verde area, to see this connection piece be the culmination of the Swamp Rabbit Trail Green Line. So that's good. There's one item of particular interest of mine that I want to just state publicly, but also seek assurance that as we consider this MOU, it can be properly addressed downstream based on the approval of it. So I mentioned the Swamp Rabbit Trail Advisory Group, and there was a lot of effort that went on within that particular group at that time that led to some design principles. And one of the design principles states, or has stated, that an objective here is to balance access and connectivity with minimal impacts addressing views, lighting, security, and privacy of nearby residential neighborhoods, which I think makes sense and is a good thing. My question for the planning administrator is, in your view, with the MOU that's before council tonight, will this language found in the MOU put the city in a position to, among other things, ensure the accomplishment of what I just said in terms of that design principle?
Yes, so in order for the final design to be approved, it will have to be accepted by the Director of Planning, the Director of Engineering Services, and the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. And as part of that, we would obviously work with the community, work with knowing that several of us actually sat on that same committee that you just referenced, and understanding the desires of the community over there and ensuring that it meets all of our design requirements that we would want to see under the code, as well as what we know to be the case from the community. And in looking at it, we believe that there's adequate land here. Obviously, it's a large area, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be able to adhere to the strictest of our buffering and landscaping requirements as set forth in the code, as well as ensuring that the design of any boardwalk sections are done in the manner that we feel comfortable actually meets all of the design requirements and intents. Having said that, this MOU this evening is just to move us forward with understanding the arrangement for the construction and the long-term maintenance of this project. Prior to any type of us taking over the asset or the improvement, it would require approval of this body and acceptance of that infrastructure as public infrastructure.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Okay, resolutions. We have a number of resolutions tonight. 16A.
A resolution to update the city's commercial corridor improvement program process and guidelines and to align with the Greenville 2040 comprehensive plan.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. 16.
Can I just say a concern on that one? I do not want the Wade Hampton corridor removed from that special facade improvement program consideration next June. I just think in light of the work we have to do on that boulevard, I'd very much like staff to consider that as June 30th of 2020.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked about that, and I think that's something that we can talk to staff, that we need, if we need to extend it, we can extend that.
We're actually spending a lot of money on the facade improvement. That was one of the more eager, or
Yeah.
one of the more eager corridors, in fact, to use the money we offered. So that's an encouraging note. 16B.
A resolution to support the implementation of road diets on portions of Grove Road, Cleveland Street, and Elford Street in the city of Greenville.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second, do you want to see Clint's report?
I don't need to see it, but I do want to thank all those who've been involved in recent weeks to help map out yet another safety opportunity on our roadways, this time in the form of these 3 streets.
Pretty darn significant. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. 16C.
A resolution to authorize the acquisition of approximately 2.038 acres of real property located at or near the intersection of Augusta Street and Thruston Street, identified as 511 Augusta Street, and portions of 70 Thruston Street and 80 Thruston Street for the purpose of right-of-way improvements.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. 16D.
A resolution to support the appointment of a liaison to the Upstate SC LGBT plus Chamber of Commerce.
Move to approve.
Second. And I'd like to say a few words on this.
Say a few words.
Brandon, thank you. I know you were going to present it, but I feel like I've lived and breathed this and just want to say, you know, this resolution is more than just a quick aye. It is a statement that supports our city's priorities of inclusivity and our city's priority of economic development. And the LGBT community is valuable to both those endeavors. I appreciate Mr. Prescott speaking on behalf of the chamber. They've been invaluable in advising us in policy reviews that can help make us more inclusive of businesses. And speaking as the liaison to the Visit Greenville Board, having something like this in place also helps us in our endeavor to return group and convention travel to Greenville, which is incredibly important. I would echo the same comments for the upcoming, the following resolution, and I do see Ms. Mendoza here, but if I could ask the members of the chamber to stand that are here tonight, the LGBT chamber, members and leadership of it, I greatly appreciate your help. Thank you, council.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. 16E.
A resolution to support the appointment of a liaison to the Hispanic Alliance SC.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
I'd like to make a statement on this one too, Knox, please.
Okay.
I'd like to recognize Adela Mendoza, who is Executive Director of the Hispanic Alliance, and thank you for putting up with me on the board.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. 16F.
A resolution to adopt in principle the Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Manager. You
Couple,
wanna add anything?
couple quick items, Mayor. First, I know Councilmember Stahl was at the Planning Association meeting last week, and Greenville took home the top prize, so congratulations to everyone involved, Shannon and her team. The award reflects really well on Greenville, and it's a great plan, so congratulations to all and all the volunteers that participated in the development of the 2040 plan. And we did want to take just a couple minutes and give you the latest update on the Swamp Rabbit Trail. Kaylin's been hard at work. We've been coordinating with Greenville County, and we've got the latest and greatest.
Mayor and council, appreciate you having me tonight. Next slide, please. Actually, I have control here. We have been working very closely with the county, and I know there's a lot of question marks about what's getting paved when, what's already open, and what the public can expect. So this is a kind of a quick and dirty map to give you an idea of what's out there now and what's to come. In a nutshell, the section between Holland Park, where Home Team Barbecue is, and the Think Tank Brewing location, that section of trail is currently open, as a lot of people are already aware. The section between roughly Woodruff Road and Verde will be finished by the end of the year, and then all of the remaining sections will be finished upon the completion of the city projects of the pedestrian bridges. I do have updates on our project as well coming up. Any questions on the county schedule before I move forward?
And we are out for, Clint, where are we on design, exploration of the Verde Underground crossing? Just real quick. And we were out for bids, I think, last time I asked.
I do have an update on that.
Okay, or Kaylin, whoever.
We currently in preliminary engineering
Okay.
for that, and should know something early next year on the feasibility of the underpass.
Okay, and we have an at-grade for temporary accommodation.
So just to touch quickly, I know it's been a long night, so I'll try to go quick. Moving from Cleveland Park into all the way to CUI Car, some of the projects we're working on, Paperclip, everybody's aware of, Lawrence Road Bridge, Haywood Road Bridge, the Verde at grade, which is a city project, the Verde grade separated, which we're studying an underpass, and then some neighborhood spurs as well. Paperclip, we're about 40% complete. Not sure if you guys have had a chance to make it out there, but they've moved about 20,000 cubic yards of dirt and rock. And current status is they're working on the Richland Way section, the lower section with the tunnel closure. You're starting to see some stone get laid down there. That'll connect into Cleveland Park. And the first retaining wall has a couple of courses being put down, and we'll start getting finished up probably the latter part of this week, beginning of next week. Still on goal for completion, feeling pretty good about the schedule, weather permitting always. And in addition to that, we are still working on a Cleveland Park pedestrian bridge on the other side of Washington Street. We've looked at multiple iterations with the design engineer and kind of looking at costs associated with a couple different ideas and approach designs that we were looking at. We're moving forward with a design that will require a FEMA map change. And so that's an unavoidable thing because we are working in a floodplain. As everybody knows, the park is located in a floodplain. And so a result of that will be some schedule delays and some additional costs, but it is the most economical route that we can take for that project. Lawrence and Haywood bridges, overall completion is just under 90%. Lawrence Road Bridge, we're working on the final cord span section to go in. It's going to connect to the E-ball side of the bridge. Wall forming is going to start here in the next couple weeks, and the deck pours beginning part of next month. Haywood Bridge is a little bit further along. Deck pours are nearing completion, and the curb and rails are going to start going in pretty soon in the next few weeks as well. Goal completion for both projects listed there. Lawrence Bridge is probably going to be first part of next year, and the Haywood Bridge is on track for end of this year. The Verde at grade is under construction. We're about 30% complete with the implementation of that. We're waiting on a boring contractor to get some work done. Our traffic engineering will follow, and this, a full stop signal will be implemented there, and will be a really safe, well-designed at grade crossing, but an interim solution to a grade separated solution that we are looking at. Grade separated, as Clint said, we're under engineering right now, anticipating beginning of next year to have a good idea of the feasibility and costs associated with that. And then in addition to all of this, we have AECom under contract for neighborhood spurs, connecting the 3 neighborhoods that this new extension is going to run right through. And so this will provide direct connectivity for Nickeltown, Gower, and Verde. The Verde portion, most of which will be provided by the MOU that you heard about earlier, but there is a section coming off of Verde Crossing over to Henderson Road that will have to be formalized to make the connection into the neighborhood as well and connect to Lawrence Road. So we hope to be completed with that, ready for bidding, full engineered drawings by summer of next year. Any questions?
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
All right. Sure.
Second,